I'm recording to the cloud.
Alrighty, hang on here.
Take charge.
There we go.
All right, looks like everybody's in.
I think we're in.
Woo!
Teri, do you want to set the focus?
Oh, sure. Well, okay, so this is multiple people. So hi, everybody. We're going to have just the people who are going to be speaking have their microphones off mute, basically. And if you set your viewing screen to speaker view, then you will be able to see the people who are speaking and you won't get distracted by all the other people that are on the screen.
Yep.
So that's the best way to handle that one.
Okay. Because we have a lot of folks that keep forgetting to take off their video.
Yes.
So this way it won't matter.
Yes. Okay, we are recording. So today we have, this evening we have for our writers panel, we have Miss Catherine Asaro, actually doctor. I realize that.
There she is.
Yeah. And we have Mr. Craig Martelle. And of course, we have our very own Vera Nazarian. Full bios for everyone. Full bios are on the official TAG website if you want to read them. I'm not going to go into them because they're kind of long. They're kind of accomplished people here.
And
Long
it's
is
all
so
there.
relative.
Huh?
all the
Long
bios
is so
are-
relative.
Hey, now don't do that. you gotta take advantage of the fact.
I will read these very, you know, I'd rather get the questions here. Okay, this is for all of you. What is happening in the publishing world right now?
That's a big, grand question.
Yes, it is.
I was just going to say that I wanted to have another person on this panel who didn't make it, unfortunately, but we have, I think, a wonderful spread of people because we have a long time, you know, acclaimed author, Catherine Asaro, who has just been one of my favorite idols, and I really think she's the perfect person to have on an Atlantis Grail convention because, you know, the kind of books that you write are just like, they're the same vibe.
Oh, thank you.
And I just, you know, I love your Skull and Empire books. I've been a fan for a long time. And I just feel that, too bad you missed on the science panel, because I think we had a little scheduling issue there, but earlier we had a science panel where you could have discussed some of the science behind it, but we can still do it here. But yeah. And the other person we have, of course, is Craig, who is, I'm looking at you, Craig, and thinking, this is the new publishing industry. And we have a combination of the classic and the current. And, you know, not saying anything. I mean, I'm kind of like, you know, going back and forth. And, you know, I think it's fun to discuss what's going on now. How are we publishing? What are we publishing? You know, what are the current books that we have out? Because, for example, Catherine just had a book out, right? You're on a release tour right now.
Yeah, yeah. The book, The Vanish Seas, came out in July.
Right.
So it's a virtual tour this year because of COVID.
Yep, exactly. And then Craig has, I just saw him read a chapter of his new thriller because he's got a, Craig is like a machine. He just puts them out. I don't know how he So he has a really
Put in a lot of hours.
Yeah. And I just want to see how we're doing it. Let's talk about it. Like, you know, how does it happen that we got it? And how is your schedule? You know, how did it become so crazy and intense? And what happened? You know, want to fill us in a little bit?
Well,
Sure. More than
how is COVID-19 affecting your work?
Yeah, that's a good question.
Kath?
For me personally, I'm sorry. Go ahead first, Catherine. I'm sorry, I'm such a slug.
Oh, no, that was fine. I'm actually writing more. I'm working on something that's nonfiction right now, so.
Oh, that's
but I would have been doing that anyway. I wouldn't really say it's affected me as a writer, but wow, has it affected the publishing industry. You know, everything slowed down. Everything is because people are working from home, and things like getting my box of books. Usually I get it a month before the book comes out. This time I got it a month after.
Oh.
You know, but I did get it. They did their best. All the infrastructure that goes into traditional publishing is either halted or slowed down. So, you know, book tours have to be virtual, because who wants to go someplace where they can get sick and die, you know?
exactly.
I mean, I shouldn't laugh, but it's changed how they market the books, how they distribute the books. A lot more ebooks. People are buying a lot more ebooks rather than going to signings in bookstores. I'm sure, Craig, you've had a lot of stuff going on.
Oh, you bet. And this this was my slowdown year. I expected to write and publish only 4 to 6 books this year. And I'm used to publishing 12 to 15 books in a year because I write a lot. I 7 days a week, I work about 14 hours a day. So yes, you can get a lot done. And because of the lockdown or lock up, whichever way you want to call it, I've already published over 500,000 words this year. I have 200,000 words already finished on pre-order for the rest of the year. You listened to the operator, you heard that, the first chapter of that, that's done. And that one is with, actually I had to send it to Rush because I requested use of their lyrics. And so that's a 4 to 6 week licensing process to insert certain lyrics into the book.
That's
But,
great. Rush the rock star, right? The rock group.
Rush, the best band in history ever.
Yeah.
So, but
Did
no,
they
I
charge?
was able to get a hold of them in their licensing department and submit the formal request. Now, Catherine is a doctor. I'm a lawyer, so you've got the panel is stacked
So
here.
does that
And,
make Vera an Indian chief?
No, Vera is in charge of this group. So.
Well, she is a chief.
Well, Craig, did in order to use their lyrics in the book, did they charge you?
They will. It's going to be $300 per impression, and I requested 11 different excerpts from lyrics. So I figure I'm going to get a bill for $3,300 to insert those lyrics into the book. And I don't think it will earn me an extra $3,300, but to me it's worth it because Rush. But that's a separate licensing, and that's a separate agreement, and that's all the paperwork because I'm a lawyer and I love paperwork. But COVID-19 actually has been very beneficial for me because my business model is based on ebooks primarily. Even though I always buy full wrap covers, I always get all my books made into paperback. I have over 100 books published, and during this first 6 months, my revenue has steadily increased with each month because I've kept the foot on the gas. Instead of publishing 4 to 6 books this year, I published already 7 books this year so far, and it's only August. It's going very, very well because I continue to deliver content in series that people like and follow. I closed out and finished 5 different series over the last 10 months. So that leaves me with 1 active series and then 2 new series that I'm starting. So like I said, keep my foot on the gas and continue to exploit the ebook revolution. I do have books in Barnes & Noble because I have 4 books with an imprint of Simon & Schuster. And now those took a hit, but we ran some, my publisher works great with me, and we ran a huge promotion on book 1 in that 4-book set. We have all the accompanying audio, and that did very, very well on a promotion a couple months ago. So I look forward to seeing what those numbers look like but they really jacked up
Yeah.
in the rankings and
I
moved
will
a lot
be
of
curious.
copies.
I'll be curious to see if it's too soon so far to know if how COVID-19 affected the sale of my book. It's also, well, it's distributed by Simon and Schuster. It's a Baen book, and
Okay.
technically Baen, I guess you could say they're the science fiction line of Simon and Schuster, but they're an independent publisher. Somehow they worked that out. You know, most science fiction lines are just part of the publisher, but Baen is independent of Simon and Schuster. But I don't know yet how COVID affected, you know, are more people buying the ebook or, you know,
Well,
would
and you
really
went
like
2
to
months
find
where
out.
you went 2 months where they weren't even printing paper books.
Oh,
So
well, they printed
I
it.
mean,
There was no problem with that, as far as I know.
okay,
It took a
okay.
while for me to get it. But my release date was in July, and by then, you know, the worst of it here in New York was done.
Right. But I've heard that there was such a great, basically everything stopped for a while. For those few weeks, just nothing. I mean, literally the industry like took a breath and held it. So I think that's basic. That's the scariest part of it. But I think right now they're exhaling slowly. So it's starting to trickle out. But I mean, that's my understanding, is that it's slowly picking up. But you know, it's hard to say with how the COVID is going to proceed. So we don't know what
How did your release go, Vera? Because you released your latest book in May.
Actually, no. Survive. Do you know when it came out? The last book of this series, Survive,
Mm-hmm.
came out on the very first day of the year. It was not the first. What is it? It came
January
out on
4th.
the third
Was it
or
third?
second. I'm trying to think. Was it? I think we uploaded, because this was going through my own imprint, Norlana Books, and again, this book is completely indie. It's me. No, except for the audiobooks, which is different. But so it went on the 3rd, and it started to sell pretty well. You know, it moved a lot of copies. In fact, I'm living off of it. This is how I make my income, is mostly like a lot of people, like, you know, Craig, you put a lot of books out there. I put out one really big book. So my book, probably, if you cut it up, it might be several of yours. But it just takes me
Indeed,
a
it does. You're
long.
massive.
I mean, seriously, and I keep on showing everybody, this is Survive, okay? Look at the spine here, this thing, and it's 1,029 pages. This
Wow.
thing is a monster, and it's not tiny print. It's you know, pretty reasonable print. So yeah, this thing took me 2 years to write and put out. So, and I'm living on it. This is my income. So this is how, you know, I hope fans continue to buy these things, but mostly it's ebooks. I would say 90% of my income is ebooks. 10% is a combination of paper and audio. At least maybe audio is rising slowly, because audiobooks are doing pretty well right now. But as far as, I don't know how you guys are, audiobooks are the next new good market. It seems that audiobooks are what ebooks were about, I don't know, 5 or 6 years ago. They're just starting to take off, and people are just like buying. So we'll see what happens with the audio.
Yeah.
Somebody saw that you were here, Vera. He heard your voice.
Oh, here, look at him. Look at little Asen.
This is Asen.
Oh.
He's named
The
after
title
a
character.
in this book. He's named literally after a character. Thank you for that. He's adorable.
And he's got his, here, stand up here.
Oh, look at that.
He's even got his little costume on.
That's the cover of book 1. Oh my
Yes. Actually, it's all, it's
Oh, you got all of them? Oh dear.
it's got all the books.
Oh my God, it's adorable.
Can you, Vera, you kind of mentioned on this a little bit, between ebooks and audiobooks is rising. Catherine, Craig, what is your opinion between the ebooks and the paper books and audio? How do you do best?
Well, mine has changed. It changes with every book. I used to just, of course, only sell in hardcover and paperback. As digital, I think, is gradually replacing the hard copy books. And now, you know, they bring it out, instead of bringing me out in hardcover and then mass market paperback, they bring me out in trade paperback and digital, and then a year later, the mass market paperback. So I think I have good sales audio, good sales digital, and good sales, you know, with the hardcover, but I think the digital and the audio are slowly, you know, slowly replacing the, especially, you know, the hardcovers used to sell a lot to libraries and, you know, universities and institutions. And, you know, the more they buy in digital, the hardcover market, you know, except unless you're like J.K. Rowling's or Nora Roberts or something, the hardcover market is not what it used to be.
Yeah, exactly.
And
Well,
people don't want them. They want, you know, I have hardcovers at a fairly good price available from Starflight Music. I have all these old, you know, brand new hardcovers. But a lot of people say, well, you know, it's a lot easier to read it on my Kindle or my Nook or whatever.
well, I mean, as a consumer, I mean, on my tablet, I can have thousands of books at my fingertips. I want to look up something, and I do a search, and it's there. I don't have to go, oh no, where was that?
Oh, I love that. And, you know, you can look up, where was this word? I remember a word from this passage, you know, and I remember times where I was trying to recall what I wrote in book like 2, say, of the Skolian Empire. They're not a series chronologically, but they're on the same universe. And it would be like the second book I wrote, and I'd be on book number, you know, 18. I'm going, what did I write? And I couldn't find it. I remember actually going online one time in one of the fan groups and saying, can anybody find this? You know, some of my fans are very good. Say, oh yeah, it's on page such and such and such and such. And another time I was thinking, I have to look up what I decided for the political parties of this universe. There are a whole bunch of them. And I'm thinking, oh, I got to go look through my books and remember which one I went into all the detail. And I was also checking Wikipedia periodically to see if you're not allowed to do your own entry, but you're allowed to check it to see if there's errors. And while I was doing that, I go, oh, there it is. What I needed to know was on my Wikipedia page.
Right. Actually, I do that too. I check for my birth. I don't remember how old I am. So I either I go to Facebook or, you know, somewhere where my birth date is. But oh my God.
Well, you've asked us, what did I do with this?
Yeah, I do that too. I use the search function in the Kindle because I just like leafing through this baby. It's just not as easy as doing a, you know, type it in.
Too many pages. Worth every one. Craig, how about you?
I first started in publishing Amazon exclusive Kindle Unlimited. And so my page read income is probably 2/3 of my total revenue from Amazon, 1/3 being ebook sales. But I target, because of sheer volume, I target whale readers, those people who read 5-7 books a week. So providing quantity is a good thing. I say that I write pulp. Now it's good. It's good pulp. It's not, but it's escape fiction. It gives people an escape, limited description, and more dialogue, more engagement, more action moving forward. So it resonates well. And the book I finished, it's coming out pre-order on September 7th. That is the 35th book in that one series and spin-offs. So a reader that picks up that first book.
Sorry to interrupt. Was
no,
that
this
military
is space opera. Space opera. And actually, it's a lawyer in space, so it's kind of a mashup. Boston Legal meets Judge Dredd. They do kick some buttocks on occasion, but I do throw the law in there as a lawyer. This is right in my wheelhouse. I'm a retired Marine as well, so I've got that
cool.
side of it. I do write military sci-fi, and it does pretty well. But I find that I like the space opera better because the interpersonal relationships and the engagement between people, as John Truby would say, it's the characters that drive the plot forward. It's not the background. It's not the special effects. It's the characters that that will carry the day, and I believe that, and I embrace that with my stuff. But the so
But
ebooks.
I think you can have military science fiction, hard science fiction, and still have character-driven plots. There's this
You have to have
feeling.
character. Yeah.
Yeah.
There's this feeling among people that, because I write all three, I write space adventure, space opera, well, four, space, you know, hard SF and some military SF.
And romance. And
What?
and character. I love it. I mean, you have the whole works.
Well, I try. You know, I didn't even know I was writing military SF or hard SF. I was just working out all the numbers and, you know, all that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And people start saying, oh, character-driven hard SF. So
Mm-hmm.
I think you can do it. But you get some
Oh, that's
flack. I mean, especially with my hard science fiction, I did get more in the beginning. People said, it doesn't feel like hard SF. There's too much female stuff in it. You know, too much emotion. And it was written often from the point of view of the woman. And I'm not sure why. I mean, I also have, you know, fans of my books, also fans of Honor Harrington, and that's written, you know, it's Honor is the lead in those. So I'm not sure what it was, but there was something in the way I wrote. I think the women there were a lot of them in the books. It wasn't just that I had strong female protagonists, but I had a lot of women or something. I don't know what it was.
Whatever it was, it made them great. That's part of the reason I really, really love your books.
Well, they
Well, and then you
discovered
weeded
I
out
was
the.
crossing over to audiences that weren't traditionally known for being hard SF or military SF readers. Like initially, my publisher promoted my stuff as hard SF, but then they said, oh, wait a minute, she's crossing over to, like, you know, romance. And I said, well, there's love stories in it. And they said, yeah, but a lot of science fiction has love stories in it, and they don't all cross over.
But see,
So, you know, my publisher's always trying to figure out why I cross genres like that.
you know, I think you were one of the seriously, you were like one of the pioneers, because right now we have so many books that are literally paranormal romance or science fiction romance, but you really were one of the first who did it right. You weren't just doing romance with, you know, with a barest, you know, a whiff of science, but you really had the science and the romance and the everything. So it's like military science, romance, action, you know, French. So you had the works.
And I got a lot of flack at first. You know, now I've been in it long enough, I don't get as much flack for it, but wow, at first. And my publisher is worried, I think with good reason, that they'd say, well, your hard SF science fiction audience, if they hear you say the word romance, they won't buy it. And I said, yeah, but you know, there's more romance readers than there are.
Times are changing. The times are changing.
One time, Diana Gabaldon and I were both the guests of honor at this convention a long time ago. And she was telling me about when Outlander came out. This wasn't that long after Outlander first came out.
Right.
And she said, well, it was a science fiction book. You know, it is time travel science fiction book. And she said, but my publisher told me they were going to market it as romance. And she said to her publisher, well, but it's science fiction. Shouldn't you market it as science fiction? And they said, well, look, we think this could be a bestseller. In science fiction, a bestseller is 50,000 books. In romance, a bestseller is 500,000 books. Said, oh, I'm glad I write romance.
And having read Outlander, I would agree that it's more romance than it would be the sci-fi.
Well, it's definitely, I mean, the whole Jamie, it's very complicated romance,
right,
too.
Right.
I mean,
Well, it's
got two
a physical, you know, they've got a very physical relationship, but then they've also got a very I mean, it's unusual. You've got a modern woman in the 18th century with modern ideas.
And they do it right. I mean, time travel romance after her book became kind of popular in the romance circles. There are a lot of them, even before her book. But she does it, she really looks at the ramifications of it. And I think that's one of the things that distinguishes science fiction is heavy on that kind of research, you know, the scientific ramifications. And even though hers is not hard science, but she really looks in detail at the ramifications of putting a modern woman back at that time. She doesn't sugarcoat it.
Right. No, I mean, there are some scenes that, you know, you're going, okay.
Yeah, don't do that.
You know, that's, there's some things there. Also, Catherine, your Scolian Empire. That is really an amazing mix of genres.
Yeah.
What's it like to use your actual physics papers for some of your mind-blowing concepts?
Well, you know, the paper that gets referred to the most is one where I showed how it's possible to circumvent the speed of light. You know, mathematically, if you take the equations of special relativity, you can figure out a way to get around the problems at the speed of light. And I wrote a paper about it and sent it to the American Journal of Physics. And, you know, they asked for some changes. It goes through referee process, and then it was published. And, you know, they said to me, please make sure that you clearly state that it's a thought, you know, these thought problems, that they're very popular in relativistic physics. You know, you pose a thought problem and it's not really something that is actually happening. And they wanted me to make clear this is kind of like that, a thought game, you know, because to do it, I have to introduce a non-physical. I've talked about this before, but you make your speed into an imaginary number, which, you know, you can tell from the name, it doesn't exist. Imaginary speeds don't exist. So, you know, one little problem that stops you from doing it. But of course, it's science fiction. But, you know, I was thinking of writing the paper and I hadn't gotten around to it. You know, I was doing other things like having a baby, you know. It was occupying my time and my interests. And then my editor, Tor said, you know, this is your first book and it's really, really good hard SF. And they liked that it was character-driven hard SF.
What says,
it would help with the marketing if you finished that paper.
Oh, God.
And it got published. He said, that would look really good for the marketing. So that may be one of the only referee journaled science fiction papers that got done because marketing at my science fiction publisher wanted me to get my
that was primary inversion, wasn't that for primary inversion? Yeah. Oh dear.
Well, I'm glad he pushed me to do it.
We're glad too.
Oh yeah. What would you say is your favorite genre to actually write?
Science fiction. Yeah.
Okay.
I've tried to write, I've written some fantasy and I like doing it and they paid me very well, which I also appreciated. Well, I work at Maria Teresa Hussey and Luna Books were wonderful. They treated me very well. But you know, every time I try to write fantasy, I think, oh, wait a minute. I could think of a scientific reason for that. And then boom, it's science fiction.
You're incorrigible, okay?
I mean, Craig, you write it's all science fiction, right? What
yeah,
you do?
Craig, tell us, what is it? You're going into thrillers now, right? But
well, my primary is science fiction. I love it. And I am a huge Anne McCaffrey fan. And I'm friends with Todd McCaffrey. And Todd, he said, my mother only wrote science fiction. And she always gets tagged with, hey, you're writing fantasy because she wrote dragons, but the Dragon Riders of Pern is science fiction. They're genetically engineered creations. So you look at that. I like to think that I write science fiction and McCaffrey style because I have telepathic cats in a lot of my books. So everybody needs to know what their cat is saying, and but it's usually through genetic engineering or something like that. But I like space opera. I like, and you'll see if you look at my thrillers, I've got one already published, and that one I call it a pseudo autobiography, because 20 years in the Marine Corps in military intelligence, working for the three-letter organizations, and that's where I gained my abject just hatred for bureaucracy, and especially political bureaucracies. So and Vera also. Being coming from the former Soviet Union,
Oh,
I'm sure
yeah.
you don't like it either. The
No, we
bureaucracies
don't.
and the politicos, yes, doom on them all. And so if you look at my books, actually you see they could be, the backdrops are different, but the characters are very similar. After I wrote my first like 40 or 50 books, I looked and I said, every single one of my main characters is a Marine. I need to change that. So that's where the space lawyer came about, because she was the first character I wrote, main character, that wasn't a Marine. And that was, I had to get away from, write what you know, right? So a Marine and Marine mentality and that kind of thing. So that's what I wrote a lot. But science fiction, because it really gives you the ability to explore current social issues, just like Star Trek, the original series. If you look at that from the 1960s perspective, they were way out there in their ability to take a social issue that was very divisive and make it reasonable to talk about for all sides, because they made, hey, the people were green, so this isn't a threat. And here we're being compelled by short people with telepathic powers and telekinetic powers. So it wasn't really this interracial kiss. And the way they melded all that in and made it work, I loved how Gene Roddenberry, DC Fontana, the visionaries that they were, and I hope that I can get some of that in my sci-fi. One thing that I don't ever talk about on Facebook or in public is my politics. Doesn't matter. Everything you need to know about me, you can see in my books, and see how I write and things in there, and how we discuss the issues. So that's it. We hide them on that backdrop of a red planet with a blue sky.
Yeah. You mentioned Anne McCaffrey too. I love her stuff,
Yep.
We've been talking about two of my favorite authors, Anna and Diana Gabaldon. And I think what distinguishes that kind of science fiction, it sounds like, Craig, you do it too, is that attention to detail that goes beyond, it's not on the surface, whether it's historical, like Diana, she writes historical fiction. And Anne McCaffrey, I would say she writes science fiction. She's very attentive to the detail of how these dragons work. Fantasy is also that way. I mean, to write good fantasy, I'm in awe of people who can do that, because, I've tried to, and it draws on our mythologies, either created or, we have this rich mythological culture, a lot of different cultures have different mythologies that fantasy can draw on. But I think what distinguishes all of those genres is the authors who are really careful to build their worlds, like, the way Anne does, or someone like Diana does, because it adds
Verisimilitude.
Yeah.
I think
that word. I can write it, but I can't say it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it adds that to the work, and I think that's just what people call hard science fiction in my stuff. Is I do that with mathematics. I work out all the mathematical equations and the physics and the chemistry, because I love it. I absolutely love doing it.
So that's something you can only do if you love. I did that in one of my military sci-fi books. I calculated the distances and the speeds, and it would take 2 weeks to get in between planets. And some of the readers are like, "What are you doing? You're killing me here." I'm like, "Okay." So we compressed it and they spent 2 weeks doing this, like one paragraph of 2 weeks, and then all of a sudden they're there, and then they're trying to slow down, and I mean all of the physics, and Yeah. I'm like, okay, let me cut all that stuff out. So I did that for one book, and that's all I lasted.
Well, I found that a lot of times it's exactly what you said. You do all this research and you get all that. But then if you put it in the book, the plot comes to a screaming halt. So you learn how to compress it, how to give it that sense to show, what you're doing. Or how to weave it into the story, like showing what happens when you take an elevator from, if you have a wheel space station and you take an elevator from the hub where there's no effective gravity. I mean, it's not gravity in the same sense a planet has it, but if the wheel spins and you go out to the rim, it feels as if you're in a gravitational field. And talking about how the turning of the wheel affects you as your elevator goes out from zero gravity to the rim of the wheel. And all, physics makes you get pushed to the side, and there's Coriolis effects and everything. And I did all this work on that, but all it comes in is when the main character is riding the elevator, she's thinking, that's odd, I'm getting pushed to the side, Because, you don't want to go into a lot of detail, which I've been accused of doing, and bore your readers, but you do want to give it, realism.
I know that Vera you've often said that you're a pantser. You kind of fly by the seat of your
yeah.
So I'm going to ask Catherine and Craig, are you pantsers or are you outliners, organizers? You know exactly what you're going to write and you write it. Craig, you want to start it?
Oh, sure. My first bunch of books I wrote just discovery writing, just write and tell the story. And then I started plotting in some detail. And I wrote those, and now it didn't take me as much time to write those books because I knew what I wanted to write, but I only lasted half of the outline before I deviated and went on my own way and wrote the book. So now I use a modified thing where I think about it. I decide, hey, here's how it's going to start. I write that first chapter, I rewrite that first chapter, and then I rewrite it some more times until that first chapter is the perfect hook and flow. And then we go through it. We have where our high points are. We have where the dilemma is resolved. We have where the second dilemma happens, and then bring it to the close. So I write the first chapter and I write the last chapter. Here's how I want it to start. Here's how I want it to end, and then flow through it and add subplots based on length, a desired length. If I want 70,000 words, if I want 90,000 words, then I add material that goes with the main plot till I get the word count I want and tell the story that I want with the main story driving the train. So I am a pantslurger.
You're a hybrid.
That's right.
Wow.
Catherine, how about you?
Well, I usually start the book and write from the beginning to the end. Sometimes I know exactly what I'm going to write, but it's all in my head. I hate writing outlines with a passion. I figure I just want to write the book. Now I sell my books on proposals, so I usually only have sometimes, like there was a while when I started making up these stories when I was a kid, and by the time I was published, I had a lot of stories in my head, and they were very complex because it had decades to develop. So they did. And I knew exactly what those stories were. And so I just wrote them from what was in my head. So there's like maybe 10 books like that. Now I tend to sell on proposals, and I say, this is the proposal's like a page long. And I often don't have a lot of the details in my head at the time. But when I start writing the book, they come to me. I don't know how it happens. They just come to me.
Yep, same here.
Yeah, it's like, yeah, I don't know. Most of the time it's fine, and I have to keep myself on track. One time though, the book that I wrote was entirely different from the proposal I sent. And when my editor got it, he said, this is not what you said and what we thought. He said, but I like it. He said, I like it a lot, so I'll take it.
What about you,
Okay,
Vera? You write 350,000 word books.
You know, I a little bit like Catherine, because I have I like to think of it as a long jog through a swamp. And there's somewhere on the other side, there's like a city or land or whatever. That's my end. So I need to get myself from the beginning to the end. Now, as I go through the swamp, there are little rocks and posts and, you know, garbage and things. So I really don't have any of the details. I mean, to me, if I had them, it's almost like it makes it impossible to get interested in the book. I'm really strange. Like, if I know too much about the story, I'm too bored to write it. So the idea of plotting it out is just like kills it for me. It really, really kills it for me.
It always
I
turns out to be a different book.
Yeah, I tend to think of it as sort of, you know, the destination, but it's the journey itself that is actually creating whatever it, you know, there's,
Yeah.
you know, okay, I'm going to take a cross country, you know, car ride, van ride, whatever. And, oh, let's go see the world's largest ball of twine, the world's largest hand-dug well. And those are just things that, oh, well, that's interesting. Let's stop.
Yeah.
But if you took the interstate, you're not going to see these treasures.
Well, even you know, even when I tell myself, and I've tried it, believe me, I want it to be efficient planning, you know, like with Craig explaining things like, you know, I have the high points and the second problem and the first. It's like, what? I only know how to, like, there's this emotional pull. The characters have to deal with this problem, and there's some other problem later on. But from connecting these two dots together, I have no idea. It just kind of happens. So I just let it go. That's how I come up with, you know, strange characters appear, strange things happen. I'm sitting here going, what did I do?
But that's the benefit of a character-driven plot, in that you can take these side trips and it can still move the characters and their development forward. And you're not getting lost in a side plot that doesn't matter, because it all matters if you have the characters that it matters for.
There's something I wanted to mention. I don't know if you've seen, there's these wonderful comments. I'm not able to look at all of them, but I've seen some of the comments going by. And one person said, can the science writers write appendices? All that science, we do all that research on, and then, you know, it gets in the book, but not in that detail. And the answer is absolutely yes, 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 yes. And I've done that in quite a few of my, so the Scholian books. I've had, you know, and that way you can put all the math or the science neepery in the appendix. And if people like that, they can read it and see how it, you know, reflects in the book. Or like with the Quantum Rose, every chapter that the book was a retelling of Beauty and the Beast in a science fiction setting. So, you know, I wasn't going to go into a soliloquy of quantum scattering theory in the middle of the book.
Right.
But each chapter title, there were two titles to each chapter. One was a sort of a poetic title, and then there was a subtitle which the whole book is an analogy to quantum scattering theory, because I was writing my doctoral thesis at the time I was working out the story. So what I did was write an essay in the back of the book talking about what the subtitles meant of the chapter, like this chapter about this character who's a colonel, a military colonel. She's introduced to the plot at that point. The subtitle referred to Colonel Kernel, which is a mathematical, occurs in mathematical equations and helps drive certain processes that you can describe in physics. And she was playing that role in the story as a colonel that the mathematical thing played in quantum scattering theory. And so, you know, I didn't want to go into all that in the book because I'm telling this, you know, story about these two characters. So I wrote it in the appendix. You know, I went through the whole thing and said, this is what it meant. This is how it applied, you know. These people are bouncing off of each other like quantum scattering of particles.
As our
I
final
love that.
question,
That was fun.
tell us about your latest book, series, or fictional universe, and make us want to read it. Catherine, since you're front and center.
What, you want me to tell you about my most recent book?
Yes, let's hear about it.
Make me want to read it.
Well, it's called The Vanish Seas. It's a science fiction mystery. Okay, the PI, I initially started this series of books when Mike Resnick asked me to contribute a novella to an anthology called Down These Dark Spaceways. And it was a science fiction play on the sort of Raymond Chandler mystery of the hard-boiled detective.
Okay.
In first person. And so I went and read Raymond Chandler, and I enjoyed it, but I thought, no, we need a female PI here. So I wrote, the hard-boiled female PI. And she was very popular. She's one of my most popular characters. So, sorry, I just got distracted. I saw someone wrote one of my books is selling for almost $1,000 on Amazon. Like, what? I'm only selling it for $21.
It was a first edition.
I have first editions brand new of that book for $21. But anyway, so I wrote this novella for Mike, and she's a very popular character, and Bain was interested in me developing into a series. So I did, and the most recent one, she comes from the Undercity, which is a very, it's very unique culture. It's a lot of poverty, a lot of crime. It's very hard to get there. They're very secretive. It's also very beautiful. It's got, it's beauty and this crushing poverty side by side. And she had a very tough life, but then she enlisted, and she was in the Army for 20 years. She became a major, and then she retired and became a PI. So she knows this place. Nobody can go there except her, because, if you go there, you'll get mugged or killed. They don't like people, outsiders, coming there. Well, the rich people in the city above this place where she grew up are starting to disappear. And are they being killed? They're very powerful people are disappearing. So she's hired to solve this problem. But then somebody's trying to kill her, and she doesn't know why. But they think it might be because she's the only one who can, go in between these two worlds. So does she survive? Or is it the last book in the series?
And what's the title again?
It's called The Vanished Seas.
The Vanish Seas. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Craig.
Vanished.
Holy cow. Okay. Yeah.
I know, I'm putting you on the spot.
That's a hard act to follow. So my current series and one of my best series is a space lawyer. Imagine, if you will, a marshal from the Old West who gets sent out to frontier planets to resolve the law. But the only reason she's a magistrate, which is the senior lawgiver of the Federation, is because she murdered a man. She murdered a bad man because she can read minds, and that's let's say a trait that she has that isn't common. So the Federation legal system, they want to exploit that because it also shortcuts the processes of discovery, of finding evidence, of prosecuting. If she can look right into people's minds and see that, yes, you're guilty, then she can punish the guilty immediately, and it doesn't burden the system. And it's a good process for dealing with crime on frontier planets that are out and about throughout the Federation. So that's what she does, and she builds her crew. She has a small spaceship that then she fleets up because she starts adding people to her crew, of her different perspectives. And so each book is a different element of case law. And I work it in very small, very minutely, because I don't want to overwhelm anybody, but also I don't want my 3 years in law school to go to waste. So I got to get that legal terminology in there and throw in some Latin every now and then, because I expect my editor, when I send this latest book to her, will check my in camera, which is in chambers. It's Latin, but she's like, "What's a camera doing here?" And she's probably going to mark it all up, and then she, yeah. So I'll have to put a note: "Do not change this. It's Latin." And so this is it, and so there's a lot of action. I use the tagline of Boston Legal meets Judge Dredd, because it's got some courtroom drama, but then it's got a lot of action because the criminals that she's sent after don't want to go. They're not willing to be arrested because they're bad. But it goes back to, no bad person really thinks they're bad. They think what they're doing makes sense from their perspective. So I never have a character that's just so evil and hated that the readers want to stop reading. You got to keep them interesting. You have to keep them engaging and make people wonder, is this person really that bad, or what's going to happen? You have to keep that little bit of mystery in there. So my Space Lawyer series, Judge, Jury, and Executioner, and I did check that, and that's the series name.
Can you say it again? Judge, Jury, and Executioner, right?
Judge, Jury, and Executioner.
Perfect.
Well, folks, believe it or not, we've run out of time. I know. Things were just getting good.
Just when we want to hear more about these great books.
Well, there's somebody asked a question about names. I would love to tell you that I have all my names before I start writing my book. But what I do is I have a reader page, and I ask my readers, can you provide a name for a female alien, a male alien, a butthole? I always ask for, give me a name of an asshole. And then people come get very creative. And I'll put those in. Some people say, hey, here's my kids' names, and I'll work those in, and then in my author notes at the end, I'll give them credit. And then sometimes I'll search, like if I want a bad guy, like Malbec. Okay, hey, that kind of sounds bad. I mean, yes, we all know it's a wine, but we make Mal from, Malfoy, right? J.K. Rowling did this. She made those elements part of the names. So right. It's very important to get the names right. It's very important to get your book title right. And that's something as well. It has to be something that relates to your subject, but simple enough that it adds mystery and tells your readers that this is going to be a good book.
Yes, absolutely. That's such a good point. Because, sometimes they're too, like when I see this more in television series shows where there's not as much pressured for episode titles to be, brilliant. And sometimes they're just like, we go to the store. Name of the episode is We Go to the Store, and they start out going to the store. And it's like blunt and not particularly clever.
Well, I want to thank both of you. I want to thank everyone.
Thank you.
Catherine, it's been really nice talking to you.
Oh, thank you.
A little bit before this all started. Craig, I appreciate your help as well and your answers. You've given us some more ideas and some other books that we might be able to look at.
And let's put them down in the chat. I was going to say, before we go, let's put down the titles in the chat, Discord chat, so people know them and that they can.
Catherine was doing that.
Yes.
Well, I put mine in Craig's. I didn't get the title on yours. What's the title on yours, Vera?
The Atlantis Grail. The Atlantis Grail.
Atlantis Grail?
Right. Or you can just go, the first book is called Qualify. It's easy. Qualify, like qualify for rescue. So qualify.
And in the last email that I sent you guys, I did give you a link to Discord. If you'd like to pop over there and chat with some fans, you're more than welcome to.
It's great. Thank you.
I was
Thanks for hosting us.
Could I put up my website?
Oh yeah, please do.
I would suggest doing that over on Discord.
Right. We have it already up on the website, but we want you to put that in as many places as possible. So
yeah.
This is, I have a, oh wait, I sent it to the wrong person.
That's okay. We're doing that too.
We're doing it all this
And we're
That's
doing
my Patreon site.
time.
If you want to support my writing.
Go for it.
Okay.
Writing habit.
I'm getting my second alarm here that I need to close this so that I can start our next.
Got it off.
Thank you guys.
I know we got,
so
we're
much.
on a tight schedule, folks.
Right, we got to get out of here. Take care,
That was
guys.
really
Thank you.
fun, and what a great audience.
Green stage of the
Okay,
games, the trivia games of the Atlantis Grail.
there we go.
So we got a lot of folks wanting to play that.
They want to play. Let them go play.
Yes.
Indeed.
So thank you again.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Have a great
It was
day.
fun.
Take care. Thank you.
Good night, everybody.
Good
Good
night.
night and good evening.
Good night.
Good evening.